All right, welcome back, everybody. Ready for another deep dive?
Definitely. Always ready to dive in.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
Well, today, I've been thinking a lot about the U.S. military lately, and
Yeah.
it feels like something's shifting.
Mm.
We always talk about a nonpartisan military, but it seems like the lines are getting a little blurry.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
What happens when politics and military traditions start to clash?
Right. And what does that mean for everyday people? That's the big question, right?
Yeah, and we've got some fascinating sources to dig into today.
Oh, yeah.
Some pretty shocking suggestions about the future of the military, really.
I'm intrigued. Let's get into it.
Yeah, so before we get too deep into it, I think it's important to sort of establish some context.
Yeah, for sure.
And, I mean, you obviously know way more with this than I do, but how would you describe the historical relationship between the U.S. military and its civilian leaders?
Well, it's always been this delicate balance, right?
Oh.
Mutual respect, clear division of power. Like you might have a president from one party, a general from another, but they understood their roles.
Mm-hmm.
Politicians set the strategy, military carries it out, everyone offers their expertise along the way.
Right.
But the key here is, and this is really important, no administration, like in modern history, has actually tried to interfere with the internal promotion system of the military.
Hmm.
Like who gets promoted, who gets key positions, that's always been based on merit and experience,
Right.
not political alignment.
Gotcha. So no meddling with the internal workings.
Exactly. Until recently, it seems.
Right, right. Okay, so now you've got this term that's being thrown around a lot, woke generals.
Oh, yeah, that's a loaded one.
And it's mainly coming from politicians on the right to, criticize certain military policies.
Sure.
What does woke even mean in this context? Why is it causing such a stir?
Well, it's almost become this catch-all term, right? For anything seen as too focused on social justice or, progressive values, things like diversity initiatives, inclusion training, policies like letting transgender individuals serve openly,
Right.
all framed as part of this woke agenda that they believe is weakening the military.
Hmm. So it's not just about military strategy anymore.
No, it's much broader than that.
It's about cultural values, how they intersect with military policies.
Exactly. It's almost like they're trying to purge those values from the military, right? Like this cultural reset.
Interesting. And this is where the case of General Mark Milley, I think, becomes really interesting.
Oh, absolutely. He's like the poster child for this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, here's a guy appointed by President Trump, right?
Yeah, picked by Trump himself.
But ended up becoming like a target of Trump's anger because he dared to push back against certain policies.
He challenged the status quo, didn't just fall in line.
And the Afghanistan withdrawal, that was a major point of contention, wasn't it?
Oh, huge. Milley was very vocal about his concerns with how the withdrawal was handled. But it goes beyond that, right? His actions during the January 6th Capitol riot, sending in the National Guard against Trump's wishes, that really fueled the fire.
Right.
And then there were those phone calls he made to his Chinese counterpart in the final days of the Trump administration.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Calls that Trump later claimed were like treasonous, even suggested he deserved the death penalty.
Wait, the death penalty?
Yeah, for talking to another country's military leader.
That's pretty extreme.
Incredibly extreme. And keep in mind, these calls were authorized by the then Secretary of Defense.
Wow.
So it wasn't some rogue action by Milley.
Right.
But it just shows how personal vendettas and accusations of disloyalty have started to overshadow like basic military norms.
So Milley becomes this symbol of the woke general that needs to be removed.
Right, like he's public enemy number one for this movement.
But is he alone in this? Are there other high-ranking officials who are being targeted because of their, perceived political views?
Oh, absolutely, there are others.
Okay.
This is where the fight over wokeism in the military really heats up.
Okay.
Take Admiral Lisa Franchetti, for example.
Right.
She's been nominated to be the next chief of naval operations, right?
Yeah.
Facing huge opposition from some Republican senators, not because of her military qualifications, but because of her support for diversity and inclusion in the Navy.
So it's not about her ability to do the job.
No, it's about her values, her alignment with this so-called woke agenda.
And from what I've read, some senators are even saying she's only being nominated because she's a woman.
Yep, that's their argument.
Not because she's the most qualified candidate, which is a it's a dangerous assumption, I think.
It is. It feeds into this whole narrative that the military is being weakened by woke policies, that diversity somehow equals weakness.
Right, right.
Senators like Roger Marshall have openly said they oppose Franchetti
Well,
because of the Biden administration's, supposed obsession with diversity. They claim she's being promoted based on her gender, not her merit.
right. So they're basically saying a woman just can't be the most qualified for such a high-ranking position.
That seems to be the implication. Yeah, it's pretty controversial.
Yeah, and it plays right into this whole woke narrative.
Exactly. It's all connected.
But it's not just about individual nominations, right?
No, it's much bigger than that.
I mean, Senator Tuberville is essentially holding the entire military promotions process hostage.
Oh, he's thrown a major wrench in the system.
Yeah, and all over the Department of Defense's policy on abortion access for service members.
Right. It's his one-man crusade against what he sees as a woke policy.
Blocking hundreds of promotions.
Yeah, it's created this huge logjam, tons of uncertainty in the ranks.
And this has even led to some pushback from within his own party.
Oh, yeah. Senators like Lisa Murkowski and Joni Ernst have publicly criticized him.
Okay.
They're saying it's hurting military readiness and morale to have these promotions frozen indefinitely.
Wow, so it's causing this real rift within the Republican Party.
Definitely. Some are all in on the anti-woke campaign, while others are worried about the actual consequences.
That's interesting.
And then, of course, you have Pete Hegseth.
Oh, yeah. Front and center in all of this.
Prominent conservative commentator, potential tick for Secretary of Defense.
Trump's favorite, right?
Yep. And he's made some pretty bold statements about his vision for the military.
Yeah, like what?
Like calling for a purge of generals who he claims carried water for the Obama and Biden administrations.
Wow, a purge. That sounds intense.
It is. It's not just about changing policy direction. It's about a complete ideological shift.
Right, getting rid of anyone who doesn't align with his worldview.
Exactly. And what's really striking is he's not even focusing on specific policy disagreements.
It's more about loyalty.
Yeah, it's about perceived loyalty to previous administrations.
Right.
Which is like a radical departure from how things have always worked.
So we're not talking about removing people based on their competence or ability.
Bro.
It's about their perceived political leanings.
Exactly. That's a very slippery slope.
Yeah, I can see that.
It raises serious concerns about politicizing the military and
Right.
undermining its apolitical nature.
Which has always been, a cornerstone of American democracy.
Exactly. It's a fundamental principle that's now being challenged.
Okay, so we've got this potential wave of dismissals on the horizon if Hegseth does get that top job.
If he gets his way, yeah, it could be a major shakeup.
But, how would that even work? Can the Secretary of Defense just fire generals whenever they want?
Well, it's not quite that simple. There are legal mechanisms involved.
Okay, so walk me through it. How does it actually work?
So appointing high-ranking officials is a complex process.
Right.
The president nominates someone, then the Senate has to confirm that nomination.
Right, those confirmation hearings can get pretty heated.
Oh, yeah, especially when there's partisan division.
But what about dismissing someone? Is that just as complicated?
Interestingly, it's much more straightforward.
Really?
Yeah, the president actually has the authority to remove a high-ranking official without needing consent from the Senate or even from within the Pentagon.
So theoretically, if Hegseth becomes Secretary of Defense,
He could advise the president to dismiss a whole bunch of generals pretty quickly.
wow, so getting someone appointed is this whole, dance.
Right, it's this whole political process.
But dismissing them is way easier.
Yeah, it's much more streamlined, which is kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah, I mean, that seems like it could be easily abused.
Oh, absolutely, especially if someone with a very specific political agenda is in charge.
It's giving me anxiety just thinking about it.
I know, it's a lot to process.
So imagine the chaos if dozens of experienced generals were suddenly dismissed.
Wiped out overnight.
Not for doing anything wrong, but just because their political views don't align.
Exactly. It would be a massive upheaval.
And it's hard to imagine that wouldn't have some serious consequences.
Definitely, both domestically and internationally.
We need to unpack those potential consequences more, but maybe after we take a quick break.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, so we were talking about, this hypothetical situation where a bunch of generals are dismissed because of their political beliefs.
Right, like a politically motivated purge of the military leadership.
Exactly. And what would that what would that fallout even look like? What are the consequences we'd be facing?
Well, first off, you'd have this like immediate vacuum at the top, right? These aren't just any positions. These are generals who spent decades rising through the ranks.
Right, they've got the experience.
Exactly. They've got expertise in everything, strategic planning, logistics, international relations.
And if those positions are just like left empty?
Oh, it'd be chaos, pure chaos.
What do you mean?
Think of it like this. Imagine a big company, right? And suddenly all the top executives are gone.
Okay.
Decisions aren't made, projects stall, the whole operation grinds to a halt.
Right. Now, apply that to the U.S. military, the organization responsible for protecting the entire country.
So it's not just an internal issue.
No, not at all. It impacts national security big time.
And it wouldn't stop there, right? What about the global implications?
Oh, absolutely. We can't forget about those.
The U.S. military, I mean, it's a major player on the world stage.
It sets the standard.
Yeah.
Other countries look to us.
So if there's this perception of weakness, of disarray...
Oh, it emboldens our adversaries. Makes the world a much more dangerous place.
Like, can you give me a specific example? How would this impact, like, a real geopolitical situation?
Sure. Let's take Ukraine.
Okay.
The U.S. is providing crucial support to Ukraine, right, in their fight against Russia.
Yeah.
But imagine if the U.S. military is suddenly dealing with internal power struggles, purges, all this chaos.
Oh, I see.
It creates an opening for Russia. They might escalate their aggression knowing the U.S. can't respond effectively.
Right, because we're too busy fighting amongst ourselves. Exactly. It's like shooting ourselves in the foot.
And wouldn't it also send a bad message to our allies?
Oh, without a doubt.
Like, hey, we're not so reliable after all.
Exactly. It raises serious doubts about America's commitment,
Right.
If other countries see our military as unstable, unpredictable, they might start looking for other alliances.
They can't depend on us.
Exactly. And then where does that leave us? Isolated, vulnerable.
So it's not just about, like, military strength.
It's about credibility, about trust on the world stage.
And once that's gone, it's hard to get back.
Oh, incredibly hard. It takes years, decades even, to rebuild trust.
Okay, so there's that aspect. But what about the people actually serving in the military?
The rank and file, the ones putting their lives on the line.
Yeah, what kind of impact would this have on them? I mean, imagine you're a young officer, you've dedicated your life to serving your country.
You've worked your way up, proven yourself.
Right, and suddenly the rules change.
Your career now depends on whether your political views align with whoever's in power.
That's got to be demoralizing.
Incredibly demoralizing. It creates this climate of fear, distrust.
Right, you start worrying about saying the wrong thing.
Or being seen as disloyal. It stifles creativity, critical thinking, everything.
And long-term.
Talent drain, the best and brightest, they're not going to want to join. Or they'll leave.
If they know their careers could be destroyed just because of their political views.
Exactly. It's a recipe for disaster.
So we've got this perfect storm brewing, potential instability at the top, loss of trust with allies, decline in morale among the troops.
It's not a pretty picture.
And all of this is happening while the world is facing all these huge challenges, climate change, pandemics.
Nuclear proliferation, the list goes on.
It's a bit bleak, isn't it?
It's definitely cause for concern.
So moving forward, what should we be watching for? What are the signs that things are getting really bad?
Well, keep an eye on those nominations for key positions, like Secretary of Defense. If someone like Pete Hegseth, who's all about purging the military, gets nominated and confirmed, that's a huge red flag.
Right. That's a sign that things are going in the wrong direction.
Exactly. And even beyond that, pay attention to the language being used by politicians.
Okay, what do you mean?
Are they having a real debate about policy, about strategy?
Or is it just personal attacks?
Right. Are they throwing around terms like traitor, enemy within?
Because that's dangerous.
Very dangerous. It means the conversation has gone off the rails.
So we've talked about the risks, the warning signs, but what can, like, regular people even do about this?
Well, first and foremost, stay informed.
Okay.
Don't just rely on sound bites and social media.
Right. Do your own research.
Exactly. Find reputable sources, read articles, listen to podcasts like this one.
Be an informed citizen.
Right. Understand the nuances of these issues.
But is there a way to, like, turn that knowledge into action? Can we actually make a difference?
Absolutely. Contact your elected officials. Tell them you care about this. Express your concerns. Demand that they prioritize national security over their own political agendas.
So hold them accountable.
Exactly. Remind them that this isn't just some abstract debate.
It affects real people,
People's lives, the future of our country, it's all connected.
and ultimately it's about defending the values that the military is supposed to represent, right?
Exactly. Honor, integrity, service to the nation.
Not to any one political party.
That's the key. The military should be above politics.
Okay, well, we've covered a lot of ground today, but before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about the global implications.
Oh, yeah. The world is watching, for sure.
Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, what might the world look like if the U.S. is no longer seen as a reliable force?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Well, for decades, the U.S. has kind of played this unique role, right?
Okay.
Our military strength combined with, our commitment to democracy and working with other countries, it's provided a sense of stability in the world.
Right, especially after World War II.
Exactly. We became like the anchor for these big alliances.
Like NATO.
Right, NATO, a deterrent against aggression, a force for peace and security.
But you're saying that role is in danger now.
I think the potential is there, and
Uh-huh.
we can't ignore it.
Okay, so if the U.S. military is seen as fractured, politically driven,
Unreliable.
what happens then?
Well, the consequences could be huge,
Like, paint a picture for me. What's the worst case scenario?
Okay, well, imagine a world where alliances just fall apart because countries don't trust the U.S. anymore.
Wow.
And regional powers, they see America declining. They feel emboldened. They start pursuing their own ambitions.
Yeah.
It could lead to conflicts that spiral out of control.
Like a dominant effect almost.
Exactly. We could see, authoritarianism rising again, international institutions weakening,
It's a much more dangerous world.
a much more volatile, unpredictable world.
It's scary to even think about.
It is, and it's easy to dismiss these concerns as alarmist, but things can change so quickly.
Yeah, I mean, look at Ukraine.
Exactly. Nobody thought that conflict was possible just a few years ago.
Right, and now look at us.
We can't afford to be complacent. The world order, it's not some fixed thing.
Right.
It takes effort, it takes vigilance.
And if the U.S. just steps back.
Or if our leadership is seen as compromised,
Yeah.
the consequences could be devastating.
Well, what's the main takeaway here? What should people listening to this, what should they take away from this conversation?
I hope they understand, what's really at stake here. This isn't some abstract political debate.
Right.
It has real consequences for all of us.
Yeah.
The integrity of the U.S. military, it's crucial for everyone, not just for America,
Oh.
for global stability, for peace.
It's a reminder that we can't take our democracy for granted.
We have to participate. We have to stay informed.
Hold our leaders accountable.
Exactly. The future is in our hands,
Yeah, it's a powerful message.
We have to make the right choices.
Well, this has been it's been a fascinating conversation.
It has.
A little unsettling, I'll be honest.
I understand.
But important. So thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure. Always happy to shed some light on these critical issues.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yes, thanks for listening.
We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas.
Keep asking questions.
Stay informed, make your voices heard. The future is up to all of us.
It really is.
So thank you, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.
See you then.